What's the most disturbing secret you've discovered about someone close to you? The amount of comments highlighting sexual abuse is grossly disheartening. I hope those who survived such things find healing in the midst of piecing things together. The reason Grandma moved away, when my dad was still a baby, to a big city, more than 3 days away from her family, was because she stabbed her stepfather and almost killed him. It was a very small village. Later she told me he was a rapist. She didn't elaborate on that, and I didn't ask any follow-up questions. She ended the convo with "I did the right thing." We never met her side of the family. I found out that my aunt, who was 13 at the time, was raped by her uncle, my great-uncle, and had a baby in a cellar in the basement of her house. The baby didn't make it, so she and her little sister buried it there. Years later, when the aunt, who had repressed those memories, had a baby, she remembered it all. When her family found out, she was labeled the slut of the family. My dad's side is garbage. A work colleague appeared on the front page of a national newspaper for a life of fraudulent qualifications. He claimed medical and law degrees, was a brigadier in the Army Reserves, and was the CEO for a major Heath fund. He actually was a brigadier in the Army Reserves, but that and the Heath Fund role were largely built on the fraudulent qualifications and a progression of jobs also based on this claims. In reality, the only qualification he actually held was as a mortuary assistant. Not even his wife knew. The fraudulent degrees had been gained when he was in the Army Reserves recruiting, and he had access to submitted position applications. He came undone when he applied for a government job and some flags were raised by the recruitment people. He tried to withdraw the application but didn't realize that an application for a government role has the same weight as a statutory declaration and cannot be withdrawn. It all went south very quickly, and he ended up doing jail time. An uncle beat a guy almost to death with his bare hands. He had walked in on a friend molesting a kid. He had to pay a fine and do community service for a long time, but also didn't have to pay for beer at the local bar for a few months. He was so reserved and kind, so it threw me when I found out what he'd accomplished in his younger years. I was pretty close with my youngest uncle growing up, at least in pictures. He was in his mid-20s when I was like 5, for context. One day when I was in middle school, he just stopped coming around completely. My entire family told us kids that he was backpacking around the nation. In high school, I was going a genealogy project on my grandfather, his dad, and accidentally found my uncle's name on the sex offender registry. Come to find out, he was running a CP ring and had served 16 years in federal prison. He's out now, and my family pretends nothing happened. I stay far away. My uncle was arrested for a cold case rape/murder from 1972. He always seemed like a nice guy. Shot himself in the head right before sentencing. One of my best friends was caught trying to meet up with a 13-year-old and was filmed and uploaded to YouTube. When I was 17, I dated someone who told me when he was drunk that not only would he probably hit me one day, and just wanted me to be prepared, but he also used to rape his little brother. Every now and then I remember that moment, and it just floors me how dangerous that kid was. Found a scrapbook of my mom and a guy I didn't recognize from her immediately post-college days. Turns out he was a long-term boyfriend of hers who killed himself when she broke up with him. My grandfather found his body. I learned at age 20, by finding the book/shrine to him. When my grandfather passed away, we discovered that he did not exist. His name was not in any government registry. He was a normal citizen, paid taxes, had a license and everything. Lived a long life, married to my grandmother for over 50 years, had multiple children, everything normal. And #X200B, still to now, no one knows who he really was and why he had a false name. My mom received birthday cards with money in them for years from her parents. She kept the cards with the money in them, saving to buy a piano/sentimental reasons. My sister, who has repeatedly stolen from family members, found the collection of cards/money and took them. My mom only wanted the cards back when she realized what happened. My sister denied everything. Fuck you, Emily. The kid that bullied me in grade 5 and 6. Turns out his father was molesting him and his brother throughout their childhood. I found out that the reason why one of my uncles didn't want to go back to Korea when he retired was that he was fearful for political reprisals if he tried to return. Turned out his brother was part of the group that assassinated the Korean president back in 1979, and his own innocence was never proven, so he was in fear of getting arrested if he ever tried to go back. One of my favorite teachers in high school turned out to be a pedophile who had been raping the same boy for 5 years. Met a super nice guy at a networking event when I just starting out in tech. He had a ton of connections and was a nice family man. Super rich. Eventually we became friends, and he was acting as a mentor figure to me in the industry. Went over to his massive new house, met his family, etc. He had the demeanor and looked like Al Borland from Home Improvement, to give you an idea. Like 4 years later, I was looking at the sex offender registry map for my local area while I was shopping for houses. Lo and behold, his house popped up. In the early 2000s, he was convicted of co-running a commercial child porn sales site. Served 5 years for it in federal prison. After my husband died in 2020, I found out he had been having an affair with a 30-year-old. He was 55, she apparently aborted his baby. Everything he told me about his prior life was a lie, second marriage for both of us, and he had been having sex with men since he was in his early 20s. To sum it up, I didn't know this man at all. We had been together 10 years and married for 6. My great-grandmother was married to 3 different people at the same time. The men were from different branches of the military. She was collecting all 3 of their paychecks at a time. I wasn't close to this person, but I did hang out with them a few times. The best man at my wedding had another really close friend who turned out to be a serial killer. It messed him up really badly. He already had mental health issues, and this sent him over the edge. I can't even talk to him anymore. I miss you, man. One night as a kid I heard my parents having an explosive argument in their bedroom which suddenly went quiet. The door was closed and locked. I found out during a drunk phone call from my mother it was because she attempted to shoot my father in the face with a .303, but it didn't go off when she pulled the trigger as there were no bullets. They were both horrified and just stared at each other apparently. They're still together. My brother was stealing money from father who had dementia. This went on for a year, and I found out about it was because the bank who had my father's mortgage called me wondering why it hadn't been paid in 6 months. My father's bank account went into the negative around this time too, and when I confronted my brother about it he said, "Well, I gotta pay my bills." I was about to take control of all the accounts and make sure shit got back on track, but my father ended up in the hospital and died shortly after that. My brother also stole some of my inheritance too. In the end, he stole over $5,000 from his dying father. My mother got very drunk one day and confessed to me that my father raped her, and that's how she became pregnant with me. My coworker lets her dog hump her leg every morning till he releases while she has her coffee, which has stayed with me since I heard it. I can't think of anything else when they talk to me. Graduated boot camp and wondered why my brother wouldn't talk to me. Turns out he was fucking my ex while I was there instead of delivering my letters. Guess guilt ate him up and he thought it was simpler to keep up the lie and not have a brother, right up until an old friend from my hometown told me what happened. My best friend confessed to me that he has a child as a result of a long-distance affair in another country. He has 3 kids in the US and is in a toxic marriage. His wife doesn't know. Son who poisoned his sick father while in hospital. Months later, he went camping with his wife and returned DOA from a knife accident. She took the inheritance and married his cousin. When I was young, I had vague ideas about my uncle being dodgy. In that, at family events such as weddings, etc., my parents would tell me, and some of my cousins, to stay away from him. When I was in year 8, we were doing a lesson in citizenship class, where we had to cut out pieces from a newspaper, no idea why, and I came across an article saying he'd been recommitted to Broadmoor Prison. Went home and Googled him and found out he'd been in prison in the 80s for kidnapping and raping someone, and had been in and out of prison since for other offenses. He also tried to sue the Sun once for defamation, since they printed something incorrect about him. He was awarded 1p by the court because it technically was defamation, but it was agreed that what they had printed couldn't have damaged his reputation any further. All I know is that he was in a halfway house for a long time. However, from what I've gathered, he was released around 5 years ago. Cousin who played Santa at the family Christmas gathering was arrested for child pornography. Police report said the Gardens officers were disturbed due to the young age of the subjects in the video. After reading parts of his charts that were released to the public, he's not coming near anyone in the family again. Thought I might see him at our grandma's funeral last month, but very glad I didn't. So my grandmother, who's been estranged from my family for a long time now, for a multitude of reasons, has this weird thing where she has to share food with people. Are you ordering steak at the restaurant? Well, oh boy, she's gotta order the same thing even if she doesn't like steak. Try her drink, it's really good. Take the first bite of chicken to let her know if it's any good. This always really annoyed me, 'cause I hate sharing food. One day I brought it up to my mom and she was like, oh yeah, grandma is afraid of being poisoned, so she wants other people to try it first. So let me get this straight, grandma thinks someone is trying to poison her so she has me try the food first? And it makes so much sense looking back, because she literally would not take a bite of anything she ordered until someone else had a bite first. Thanks grandma.